Welcome back, everyone. How are you guys doing today? We are now doing the strategy panel. Um, we got all sorts of awesome people here. If we want to introduce ourselves from maybe left to right.
All right, so you want to introduce the worst people to the better. I got you. No, I am Default Dan. Do a lot of creative content and things like that. You may have saw me yesterday on WSF. But yeah, just love all the strategy around Snap and can't wait to talk about it.
Thanks, Dan. I'm JJ Rolk, pretty much only on Twitch right now, but I'm nice pool today, so I'll be very generous with the questions and strategy. So I'll kick it over to Tuck King.
Yeah, I'm Tucker, Pirate King, Tucker, Twitch, everything. But yeah, it's going to be a great panel today. We got some awesome people from all sorts of different types of play styles and everything, too. But yeah, very excited.
Hello, everyone. I'm KX4N. I stream on Twitch, and I'm the best player.
Hi, my name's Nick, the Greek Geek. I am relatively new to the content creation game, but I'm here to hopefully help get some answers for some strategy for the scrub ranks.
Hello, I am Gregor. I am a Marvel Snap content creator. I create deck guides, and I'm decent at Snap, and I love playing different decks and talking strategy.
Yeah, so like the whole panel today, we're talking about strategy. We want to talk about it over here, and we also want to answer some questions in chat. So if you guys definitely want to submit some questions, something we can talk about as well. One of the main topics we have for today is about hitting infinite, and some people do a little slow burn for infinite. Some people do it in one day. So I guess going from left to right again, maybe. How was your infinite, climb, and what did you do to hit infinite if you have already?
Yeah, so when it comes to Infinite, definitely hit Infinite every season from the beginning. And typically in the past, it would just be that slow grind, kind of going through it and all that. But recently, I usually do it kind of within a couple days, probably usually within like week 2. I'm not the day one grinding to do it, but I usually do it about week 2. And realistically, it just comes down to picking a deck you're comfortable with. There's always like the best deck of the week, but I have a few decks that are like, hey, I know how to play these decks. I know how to snap. And that's really, to me, one of the most important things is knowing like, hey, snap here or not snap here, because it's not necessarily about winning. It's about how many cubes you win when you win each time.
So I am one of those infinite grinders. Day one, I'll push through it, but I usually do something pretty quirky. Like I'll always play the new card. I think that's something that's different as well. If we're going to talk strategy, is you can either do two ways, right? You can hate on the new card, or you can try to brew and cook on the new card. Is a really big thing, depending on its impact, right, to the game. But yeah, I think it's just unfortunate, but you got to take advantage of bots and make sure you make your climb super easy. And we'll obviously can't get away from talking about snap equity in a strategy panel. So just being smart and not tilting your way from 98 to 72 and then quitting the game. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think those are like really great points too. I think trying the new card and trying to get in a groove is always feels fresh when the new season starts. That's normally what I try to do too, but sometimes, I'm not as comfortable with the list, so I play meta myself to just try and hit infinite. But I think totally, like, it's all about cube equity and, like, when you're playing, being comfortable with lists, knowing when to snap and retreat. Like, you're snapping when you have the cards you have to win the game, or retreating if your opponent's snapping you and you've just absolutely bricked your hand. So, like, I know I'm definitely prone to some cope stays, like, I'm totally going to draw this card. There's no way, right? But I think having like that kind of like, I don't know, that confidence that, maybe it's just not this game. Maybe I should just go ahead and move on to the next game is something to just keep in mind. And I feel like hitting infinite in the first week normally is probably easier than the last week because there's more bots towards the like late 80s and 90s, opposed to everyone pushing for like the last week kind of thing.
All right, so usually I am a day one infinite grinder. I gotta hit infinite, usually on stream. Gotta get that clickbait high rank stream title. This season I actually hit rank 1 off the climb. I'm not always gonna play the new card because I want to attack what everyone else is trying at the beginning of the season if I actually want to climb the fastest. So like, for example, this season everyone's playing K Bishop, Zoo stuff. I'm just playing a combo deck that they can't interact with, stuff like that. But like, I know not everyone's gonna do that, so I feel like I'm seeing a lot of people in chat like later in the season. They're like, "Oh, I'm stuck at 80. I'm stuck at 90. Like, I just can't seem to hit infinite." And I say to everyone like, if you can hit 80 or 90, you can definitely hit like infinite. It's just about like it's the same game. Like no matter what rank it is, you need to snap and retreat well, which I don't always do. I'm a very big coper. So, but yeah, it's called Marvel Snap. You snap when you're winning, you leave when you don't have a reason to stay, and you're gonna lose. That's probably the biggest thing.
So I'm a day one infinite person. I started the trend and I regret it now because now it's my thing is day one I have to hit infinite and I'm not, I'm not Tucker, I'm not KX, I'm not Rolk. Like I get infinite every season, but I don't hit I don't hit the high ranks. I usually end up in, 5, 10K. So I think one of the tough things for me is not retreating because it's so easy to stay and the pride gets a hold of you and you're just like, no, I can do it. Or I have this and I should be, I deserve this. You get this idea of, no, I put in this effort and it doesn't matter. What matters is you being able to take your time, look at the board state and just leave. Like one of the things that my wife had, she's a more casual player, but she's hit infinite before, is she would go in saying, no, retreating is losing. And it's not. Retreating is making a smart decision. If you fold in poker, that doesn't mean you're losing. You made a smart decision. And I think it's one of the big things that people don't think about. And if more people did, I think infinite would be a lot easier.
So I don't normally do day one infinite. I usually take my time. I'll do it within the first week. I did 2-day infinite this season, playing a Zoo list because I'm like, oh, Marvel Boys Zoo seems fun. But the biggest thing I see, and a lot of questions I get from new players are, I can't get past this. Why am I having so much trouble? Most of the time, it's because they're switching up decks too often, or they aren't retreating. That's the biggest thing I see with new players is they stay when they shouldn't stay. In general, if you are unsure if you have the win or you don't know if you have your win condition, retreat. Take the 1 cube loss, minimize loss, maximize gains. That is this game. So if you know you have win conditions, you know you definitely have it. Get 8 cubes if you can. Get 4 at the minimum. And if you're going to lose 1 or 2 cubes versus 4 to 8 cubes. And that'll get you to infinite. Also, figure out when you're playing a bot. Figure out nobody is putting like specific cards in their deck. There are obvious signs of a bot. And a lot of people are like, I don't get bots in my climb to infinite. Yes, you do. You get lots of bots. So make sure you know to identify bots and when to farm them.
So I'm gonna post a link in chat that is a list. It is still accurate to this day. I've spent a lot of time every season looking at this. I can usually tell bots right from the get-go, but there are some things that are a little bit weird. But looking at this list, taking a look at the names, I've had some people that have used the names on the bot list and that default avatar, and I'm like, you're not a bot. Or I thought you were a bot, and now you're definitely not. Deadpool's Diner kind of ruined that. But yeah, going through that list, which I'll post in chat, is huge. And I think 1 cube is less than 2, 2 is less than 4, and 4 is less than 8. Like losing 4 cubes is infinitely better, exponentially better than losing 8. There's nothing worse because 8 will tilt the most calm person.
And then, yeah, that's just infinite itself. I think Conquest is like another beast of its own. Like, it's a different type of strategy in a sense because it's longer games and you're with the same person for like the entire time. So, do you guys have any strategy when it comes to Conquest opposed to like Infinite?
I mean, I'll jump in here. With Conquest, it's definitely like was mentioned down there about like knowing what deck you're going against. So even in the tournament scene, like the tournaments we have going on here, sometimes losing the one cube early just to see what your opponent's doing is sometimes really important. So going through turn one, turn two, if you don't really have a great play, just seeing what they're playing can help you retreat, lose one cube, and then be able to know exactly what to do in the next one. So again, this is outside of proving grounds where you just snap and go for it. But yeah, I think a lot of the times where you're going to be most successful is kind of knowing what that meta looks like, being able to identify two cards and know for the most part what 90% of their deck is. People like to put in their spicy card here and there, but normally when you see their one drop or two drop, you can tell like, okay, well, I mean, as an obvious, like, oh, there's a stone. It's a Thanos deck, so they're probably going to do this. Or Pixie or any of like the hazmat to know Ajax is coming. So there's a lot of those things you can pick up on, and I think that's really important because if you can get the 8 cubes quick off of like a snap because like, oh, they're playing Ultron, they don't know I have Eliath and they haven't played in the other lanes, and they think they just got the win, you can definitely blow some people out. And once you get that big swing, it's pretty easy to close it out.
Yeah, and I think like getting information from your opponent is extremely valuable. And there's a big difference between playing ladder and not knowing what they have versus playing conquest and knowing every card in their deck on the second and third game, right? And being able to do that, I think, is understanding when somebody snaps is a very subtle thing that's very important. Like, okay, I had a match with Revis yesterday, and he was trying to hide the fact that his copycat drew a death from me, but the sound effect wasn't going because we were in person. It was just a very intelligent play that he made that he talked about, like saving that so I wouldn't know how to try to counter that type thing. So the differences in running these quirky, weird decks with cards that people don't expect, sometimes you can steal cubes on ladder. It might not be as consistent as a good deck, but when you're going into Conquest, I like to take something that can answer a lot of questions, right? You don't want to go into your infinite final Conquest and play for 2.5 hours and then just come up against a deck you just brick against because you can't do anything against a Wong Mystique combo that just goes off, and wins every other time. So, I don't know. I like having fun in the game, and I like making sure that even my strategy is fun and quirky, and it's not always the best, but it's unique and can really throw people off if you use that to your advantage of not playing a meta deck.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. And I think another thing to like take into account too is like we were talking about proving grounds. If you're not comfortable with a list, test that list as much as possible. If you're trying to even go into like a silver, even a gold conquest, especially before like infinity conquest, I would just try and find your different win conditions so you have a better opportunity to snap those conditions. And in proving grounds, more often than not, it's going to be a large variety of matchups. Even though if you're not getting roped, it's normally just like one game. Just like knowing situations for yourself, and like what Nick and Gregor were saying as well, like when it comes to cube management, maybe you both did snap turn one and it goes up to 4 cubes, but like you have 10 bars of health. So making sure you're actually min-maxing how much you lose or how much you gain. There's no shame, even though it may feel like shame, to retreat for 4 instead of 4-8, so you can kind of push for later rounds and have a better hand to win the game.
All right. First thing in Conquest, please snap for 8 in Proving Grounds. Thank you. I do have a question about how do I find so many copium wins? And this can actually specifically apply in Conquest when you like discover, you identify that you have a very bad matchup. And then that's when you basically, if you have any advantage at all in a bad matchup, that's when you have to snap and go all in, basically, and hope for the best. Because otherwise, you're gonna get drained little by little by a bad matchup if you're just gonna lose every game. Yeah, if you can press any advantage, that's how you find the copium win. You just gotta trust.
I think to add on to that, one of the things is you can be in a position to where you have the advantage and you snap and then you lose that advantage. Something happens, they counter it, whatever. And I'm sure some other people here that are watching or that are on this panel have gone, well, screw you. You screwed me over, but I'm still going to beat you. And you, again, it's that pride that kicks in. You're like, I can do this, and you can't. And I think that is it. It's so easy to just go, oh, I'm sure I've got this. I've lost many, gold and Infinity Conquest because I'm just like, okay, I've got to push through. I also don't want this to take 3 hours. I think as well, one of the issues with Proving Grounds, I agree. Snap, play for 8, leave. If you're playing against someone that's not doing that, just retreat. There is no cost for you to concede that game. You can move on to the next one. I have had many times where it's just like, oh, this is just going to be dragged out. I don't have time for this. I'm testing out a deck. I'm leaving. You're also not going to get necessarily the best idea of a deck going through Proving Grounds. You'll get some idea, but you're playing against who knows what. Everyone is testing a deck there, so you're not getting a fair balance. So I think everybody can get a plethora of silver and gold tickets, so you can jump into those, test it out, and burn through some of those tickets.
I love using Proving Grounds as a place to try new decks and figure out what I could do with this deck, what are the matchups for this deck, what are my win conditions for this deck. Most of the time, I recommend when people are trying out a new list, play it in Proving Grounds, get to the point where you can get 3 wins like consistently, then take it to ladder. That way, you actually know what your win conditions are, what the matchups are for different stuff, and yeah, you can get a lot from just doing that. Don't just take a deck straight off of the internet because someone who's really good with the deck posted online. They probably know a lot about the deck and the play lines. You should probably learn those as well so you can do well with the deck versus just, you lose 3 games in a row, say this is not a good deck, throw it away. And then also in terms of like snapping in Conquest, it's all about information. You're playing for information. You can hide those really important tech cards till the end, get a really big win off of a tech card that they don't know that you have in your hand. I don't know. There's a little bit more strategy involved within Conquest than Ladder, where it's just one and done.
And then we have a question from chat over here for all of us. What is your guys' favorite deck to play? And like the snap conditions of said deck.
So favorite deck, again, even throwing it back to kind of my WSF counterpart, I really do love the Phoenix Force style deck. And realistically, I like to snap early with that deck if I know I have like some of those combos, like multiple man plus, and I kind of do a double take on the deck, but like multiple man plus some type of destroy spell, and I have Phoenix in my hand, it's an auto snap. Like if they have armor, oh well, bad for me. But like if they don't, I've already got those cubes pretty locked in. It also has Nimrod combo in there, so like having that plus Shuri in hand, I'm like I can at least do that once and be fine. So usually I just want to make sure I have 2 or 3 cards in that combo to pull off. It's a little bit easier than some of the other decks that are way more strategic. But realistically, there's only a couple cards that counter that whole combo, and they have to have it, or I'm going to get those cubes.
Yeah, so my favorite style would be Bad Galactus. And I think my favorite snap conditions are running it with Blink and being able to like blink a Hobgoblin back into a Galactus or something and really steal some big cubes because it's such a atypical play, and I think it's something you can really set up, and it takes some of the RNG out of the game with the way Blink works. The new cost mechanic Blink changed it a little bit with the death, but it's still one of the more satisfying ways to win a game is to be able to blink a Galactus on turn 3 or something crazy and make something fun happen. So again, it's not the most consistent. You're not going to put out all the power of the Sasquatch Mockingbird combos that are pretty much standard, but it's still something that can really win pretty much any game if you play it well, and it keeps you competitive. But I love my Galactus. Love making people kneel.
Yeah, those are some pretty solid lists. I like. I play a lot of like classic discard, but maybe not classic discard because I have Gwenpool in there as well. But with the newest, change to Moon Knight and everything as well, that's one of a good snap condition. Honestly, playing Moon Knight on curve, normally hitting one of either like a Shang-Chi or even like a higher end like 6 cost, like you're hitting an Ultron in a Patriot list, is definitely a snap condition I would take into account. I even sometimes get a little risky with it, and if I have Morbius and I have Dracula in my hand and discard cards, it's kind of like almost an auto snap for me because I have my win con. But it's really just when I have the enablers, or like when you have your enablers to truly do your combo, that's really like the best opportunity to snap. And like, of course, retreat. If you don't have your enablers and your opponent's snapping you early in the game, to take a look at what you have left in your deck. Take a look at the locations, and just min max. Retreat for 1, or you have your stuff, snap it, go for 2.
I've been liking the card Juggernaut a lot in like the normal Dina Kitty shells. There's a lot of games where you can just see like 1 or 2 turns ahead on turn 6 that Juggernaut is just going to be an automatic win, and I'm going to snap when I can see that line. You can set up like Juggernaut in one lane and then a tech card in the other. You push it over, the tech card always hits. Stuff like that. Also, in general, like this would apply a lot more now. Like just if you have Cassandra, like for example, if you have Cassandra against Arishem, you're dropping that, just snap that. Like that's winning a lane. They need to have an answer to it. If they don't, then you're good. Yeah. I saw a follow-up question about your favorite and least favorite card. I would like to mention my least favorite card was Doctor Octopus, and now it's gone, which is great.
Is one of the things that I'd forgotten what I wanted to mention after talking to Gregor. So I know a lot of us go online and we deck build by finding, Safety's deck, or we could see Husky's deck, but he doesn't go on Twitter. But there are certain high level players that are going to post decks that they are very good at, and that doesn't mean that you will be. You can watch the video, you can watch their gameplay, but you're not going to face the same matchups that they are. Like with KX and Husky and these people that are in like the 2 to 3 digit ranks, they're playing the same people, the same decks constantly, so they know what everyone's playing. I think Sal was talking about this in his stream. He's like, oh yeah, this is this player, yeah, he was playing this deck, and sure enough, it's that deck. So they're attacking for decks that do really well in high infinite for the players that they're matching up with. They're not necessarily matching up with someone in the scrub ranks. They're not matching up with someone who's running, a Phoenix Force deck. So their strategy and their ability to pilot that deck is important, but your ability to realize that, okay, what they're playing doesn't work against what I'm seeing. So it's really important to keep aware of that. Also with tech cards, if you've got a surprise tech card, like if you've got a Galactus, if you have a deck that's a sneaky Galactus deck, you do not want that other person to see what's going on in that deck. You want to get that 8-cube win. I know all of us have had that infinite run 8-cube win because someone did not expect what card that you were going to pull out. The second they know about that card, unless you have a couple backup plans, forget it. You're done. I think that's the best thing in Conquest. And just realize you can get more silver tickets, you can get more gold tickets. And if you don't have an infinite avatar, I've been infinite since August of last year. I still don't have one because I don't want to commit the time. It's so much time.
Okay, I think the original question was favorite decks to play. Oh, yeah. So I love combo lists. Anything, I know it's usually they're greedy, but if I can do the greedy play, I love doing that combo or just the big thing because they make for fun clips, they make for fun game moments, and that people get hyped on that. I'm probably best known for Toxic Surfer. And I really love that deck because it's very accessible to newer players. I think it runs only one Series 5 card, and there's just a lot of different play lines. But any deck where I can do like Negative or like Tribunal or anything where I can set myself up to do a really big last play, I love those decks. Those are my favorite things to play. I think there was a question, favorite and least favorite card. Favorite card by far is Jeff. Least favorite card was Leech. Now it's very quickly becoming Sandman. Yes, least. Okay, no, I'm not a Leech fan. No. Throw him in a volcano. Still, I don't like him.
I also don't like Sandman. Stop it, Husky. Stop it.
So then I guess next question, what is one of your least favorite decks to play against? And if it is your least favorite deck to play against, do you put in tech cards to counter said deck, or do you kind of just try to avoid that matchup?
So that's probably an easy question. The deck that I hate playing against right now specifically is Airshim Loki with Quinjet on one. It's too much. As far as like countering it though, like I know there's of course Darkhawk and those kind of cards that are easy to kind of put in the deck, but honestly, I just play my deck when it comes to it and whatever I'm most comfortable with, because with that particular deck, if they don't have Loki, then they're maybe playing a mid deck. Hopefully, they got some bad cards from the Airsham draw. But I don't know. I occasionally, like what JJ was saying earlier, I do like to have answer cards in my deck. Cards like Shadow King, Shang-Chi, in case stuff happens. But I don't really ever tech specific stuff, like especially the one-offs. And again, like that may be different. Like last week, I had Killmonger in a lot of decks just because so many people have Marvel Boy. But outside of that, I typically don't put too many like specific silver bullets, just more of the general broad ones, which is where your Shadow King counters a lot of different cards, Surfer, Cassandra Nova, things like that. And then of course, Shang-Chi's always a great include for a blowout on turn 6 when they forgot about that giant, character being there.
Yeah, I think Airsham is the easy answer to say deck hate playing against. It always feels like they get the cards, and when you play it, you don't, yada, yada, yada. But the new Sandman stuff has really been problematic for me, and Ultron being buffed and being able to just dump all that power across the board and completely stop what you're doing. So, and then having the tech cards in there to stop, like having a Killmonger, do you run that out earlier to clear up some space or power charge your destroy cards if you're running that deck, or do you try to save it and then they counter you with a Sandman and Ultron? So, to a fault, I'm sure I don't put enough tech cards in my deck. I'm more a proponent of trying to do something different as opposed to stopping my opponents from doing those things. But I know that's to a fault. And if I wanted to climb rank and do things better, I would do those things like put a Juggernaut in there. It doesn't do a lot by itself, but it wins you games, right? So, yeah, I think that's my biggest thing. And since it is a strategy panel, whenever someone is asking me, all right, I'm struggling, what deck to play? Well, I'm like, well, what are you running into? What is beating you consistently? And then just teching at a deck to make that help. And I think that's really important to understand. Whatever the current state of the game is what you can slot a card in a lot of times to fix it and challenge it.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I think Airsham is probably maybe a majority answer. Airsham, maybe Clog, but I think like it really depends on like your pocket meta. Like sometimes you're running into way more lists than other people. I know like pre-infinite there's a lot of high evo going around, but you're not seeing a lot of that post-infinite. So like you're still seeing a lot of Shang-Chi's and Shadow Kings and stuff. And I think that's another reason why like with Airsham it's high play rate too. Cassandra Nova was the top card for untapped stats for like the past week and a half, and had a higher play rate than Shang-Chi, which of course is why she got hit with the OTA. But I think having those cards for those specific matchups in your little pocket meta, because everyone's pocket meta is pretty different, because we have people at different MMRs, or matchmaking is also random as it is. Just having those cards to be able to counter a large majority is very important. So I think Airshim's my least favorite. So I of course have had some tech cards in my like I've had the Shang-Chi, I've had a Cassandra. Or I've had just ways to kind of either take away from Airsham a little bit. Mill's not the best into Airsham, but having Copycat as a great card, honestly, into that matchup, being able to steal a card that they don't really know what you stole, because there's 23 cards in that deck now, is really solid. And like just taking advantage of what you know from what they've seen. So if it's not a turn 1 Quinjet and they're skipping turn 1 and turn 2, taking opportunity there to really set up your side of the board and go into, this is a snap condition for me. They haven't played anything. If they do, I have such a lead already. I'm at a really good point, and just taking advantage of that.
Yeah, I'd like to agree on Airsham 100%. I think one of the most frustrating things about playing into it is just it's actually the randomness. Because if you like if you're seeing like the same decks over and over again, like I'm saying, like usually you can figure out their list pretty easily and you can play around everything. Like, but Airstem, even if you're taking Cassandra Nova, you're taking tech cards, like sometimes they just have a random card that wins the game and you can't play around that, and that's one of like the most frustrating things to encounter, I guess.
I think at this point we're on a game of telephone, and I don't remember the original question, but I know there's a couple other ones in there that I think we can take care of before we have to leave. I think about the culture of Snap. I think as far as the people that are involved, I know very few content creators that I don't have a respect and appreciation for. I think the culture of us is good. I think we need to have more communication from the higher levels of Snap, bringing information to people and being a bit more transparent as to the reasonings why. I think that would be a huge help. And as far as how to emote at a content creator, the same way that I emote when I see a content creator that I know, you point, you fist bump, and that's that. That's usually good enough. That's usually the sign of, okay, I know who you are. There might be a bit of confusion. Like if somebody does that to me, I'm just like, I don't even know me. Who knows me? But I think that's a good way of just saying, hey, I'm glad I'm here.
And I want to jump in just real quick before Gregor jumps in, just because you mentioned the culture part. And I think this, like here, what we're doing here with SnapCon is just amazing. And this is what we love, is just the fact that the culture is this awesome. All us creators, like I know we all chat in Discord and things like that, but one of the big things I love about the culture of Snap is just the fact that everybody's propping people up and just helping each other out. And I can't believe, like, from last year to this year, how many people have grown in this community and how many creators have come up and all of that kind of stuff. So in general, I think the culture is a great culture. And especially when we do things like this and get together, it's just amazing. So again, hopefully other people can make it out to these types of things and these get-togethers, but it's been awesome. So I'll throw it back over to Gregor.
Just one thing that I want to say to that. For one of the most toxic games in the card gaming business, it has the nicest people behind it. It still boggles my mind. I can get so tilted and so mad at that other player, and then I meet them in person. But you know what I mean. You talk to those people outside of that, and they're just very kind, and I like that.
Okay. First thing, absolutely love the Snap community. That's why I do what I do, is because I've been doing like content creation since 2016, and I've never found a better community than Marvel Snap. Second, the first question that was asked in this panel was, what do I hate going up against the most? And it's between Sandman, Ultron, and Arishem right now, because it's either I don't get to do my last turn 6 play, or I have to go up against my own deck or a better deck with advantage, and that sucks. But yes, the community is wonderful.
Yeah, so we have all different varieties of strategy on this panel. We've talked about a large variety of infinite conquest, decks we like, decks we hate, snap conditions and everything too. But we really appreciate you guys, sticking around and hanging out. If you guys want to say where we can find you on other socials, and then we'll go to a break.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you want to find my stuff, it is Default Dan. So twitch.tv/Default Dan, as well as youtube.com/Default Dan. Make a lot of different types of content, but really enjoy all the Snap stuff.
Yeah, and I see you, Ray, in chat, so I'll stand up for the cosplay. But it's just JJ Rolk. It could be at Twitch and a little TikTok as well. So, yeah.
And I'm Tucker. You can see me on Twitch, YouTube, TikTok, Twitter, Tucker, TUCCRR.
I'm KX4N. You can find me on Twitch at KX4N Snap. I'm also on Twitter. Yeah, thanks to everyone for stopping by and listening.
I'm Nick the Greek Geek on Twitch and Twitter, and I think one thing I can say for everyone in this panel is, if you're out there and you have questions about strategy, come into our chats. That's what we're here for. That's one of the things that I wanted to do while streaming, is like, oh, if my dumb self can hit infinite, anybody can. Like, trust me. Just come ask us.
I am Gregor2424. You can find me across Twitch, TikTok, YouTube, Instagram, all the thingies. The only place it's a little bit different is on Twitter. It's Gregor_2424. And yeah, I put out a lot of Snap content, so check it out.